The NXL 3 vs 3 World Championships was held last Friday and it was televised live on ESPN. We're going to talk about it on this week's episode of Old Guy Paintball, the good and maybe the not so good. Hello everybody and welcome. I am Craig and I am the host. First of all, I want to give credit to Tom Cole, the NXL, Major League Paintball, and ESPN for coming together to once again provide us with a really good event to help promote and showcase the sport of paintball. It's a great way again to introduce people to our sport who are unfamiliar with it and, you know, help them say, hey, it's out there. Overall, I thought the event was fairly well done. I thought it was a pretty good event. They did it within the 1 hour time frame, and you know, they had some constraints to work with, and I talked about some of those in my previous video in the preview of this and the rules. And you know, I thought overall it was a pretty decent event. First of all, you know, the camera work, the video streaming was phenomenal. You could definitely tell they're using some really good cameras. You could see the paintballs leaving the markers, you could see it hitting the back netting, so the clarity was really good. Nice overhead view looking down the field, and of course some people on the field and in the pits. So overall, you know, I thought the video streaming and camera work was spot on. Also, Manny Marshall again provide fantastic commentary on the episode. Him and Tad Martinez, who brought both something special to the whole event, I thought did a very good job from the beginning to explain the special rules of this event and paintball and commentary throughout the match. And the sideline reporter, you know, did a pretty good job getting a few people here and there. So overall, I thought it was done very, very well. And, you know, that whole aspect did, I think, a decent job of it. It was held on a baseball infield, so it was kind of held between the baselines, and the field was about 120 feet wide or so. I'd call it a 2/3 size field. We'll talk about more of that here in a little bit. But I think that, you know, there was obviously, this was not held on ESPN's like main channels, on ESPN Ocho, and there was other events going on that baseball field at the same time. So, you know, paintball wasn't exclusive, but, you know, hey, they did a pretty good job with the area they had in there. So I thought that went off real well. I thought the games were really good. They were competitive. There was a lot of action, which, I mean, I think that helps paintball sometimes. Is, you know, we do have a problem with when we have 5 versus 5 and some other things. The tendency is for long drawn out points, and it gets kind of boring. So I think the faster pace of the action actually did well for paintball. It showed a lot more of how quick it can be of a sport, and it gave us a different outlook. The special rules of only 2 pods and a hopper, I think, added something to it. The teams had to, you know, turn over quickly to make it work. And most teams had enough for 2 lines so they could meet the 30-second criteria. So a lot of players got playing time, which is always a good thing to have happen. So, you know, those are positive aspects of it. And of course, you know, it was just a good publicity. But there were some downsides that weren't all that great. First of all, the time. 10 a.m. on a Friday, you know, man, that was a tough one. I know that with the agreement they made with them, you know, there are certain restrictions they had, you know, about the timing of it and all. But I think that whole timing issue came into a little bit of a problem for them. You only had about 2 weeks notice, a Friday morning at 10 a.m. You know, that was kind of tough. People just can't go to make a special trip there or go to it. So it was pretty much relying on local attendance. And, you know, viewership, obviously, like a lot of you or like me have real jobs, and watching it on the live feed at that time is hard. We had to catch it on either a replay or on you know, a lot of people taped it or watched it on the delayed servicing like that. But the live action for streaming of it was probably not really great because of the time frame. And when I watched it in the stands, there might have been 100 people in the stands, which I kind of felt was, you know, it kind of hurt. It'd been nice to have a little more notice, more people attend. I'd love to have seen a nice packed stands with paintball to show them, hey man, we are, you know, we support the sport. We want to see more paintball. But, you have to take what they give you and, and work with it. But on the plus side, we got an hour-long episode previously last year at the Mid-Atlantic Open that was televised. We only had a half an hour segment. So it is an improvement there. The other thing I thought that had some issues were, hold on, dropped my remote. That I thought had some issues was, and a lot of people brought this up, was the speed of the game. Yes, the points were quick and fast, and the movements were quick and fast. But for some people, if you were not familiar with paintball, there was a lot of talk about people saying they had a hard time following all the action. The way the field was set up was Doritos were on the top, the snake was on the lower half of the field. So if you tried to watch the snake, you kind of missed what was going on, the Doritos or the middle. And you can only really focus on one team breaking out. It was hard to kind of really, I agree, it was a little bit hard to follow all the players, all the action. You kind of had to pick and choose what you wanted to watch. So if you really wanted to watch it in depth, you probably had to watch it twice and watch like a half or the field this time and half the next. But so there were some issues with that. I thought that maybe it was a little too fast. But the reasoning with that also is with the 3 versus 3 was, we saw with the Midwest Open a couple weeks ago that there were long, drawn-out points, and that's kind of like one of the problems is long points. Watching people just stand behind bunkers dumping paint, it just doesn't entice people to watch it. It does lose interest, or it gets boring. And I think they tried this as an experiment to see if they could get a faster pace for the game and maybe look at something for the future. But I do like a lot of the things, such as the paintball pod carry limit. 2 pods for the points. I thought that was a pretty good idea, because I think one of the problems, these players can carry 11 pods in these big events. You just get into a dumping fest, how long you can dump paint. So I thought a limited paint event was a really good thing. I think something else that would also help it in the future would be maybe is consider going to just a semi-auto no ramp and just kind of keep the markers a little slower, so you have to make better quality shots. Other than that, I did like the format of the continuous clock, but the quick 30-second changeover, man, that was a fast turnover. So you had to have 2 lines. It was almost impossible for a team to run back, reload, and get back out there within 30 seconds. So it was an interesting concept. But that may be something that, these are things they're looking at to how to improve the game for the future. And I'll discuss more of that in a future video on 3 versus 3 and does it have a future. And, those are only the real drawbacks I saw with the event overall. Once again, it was a really good showing for paintball. The other thing I thought was a little odd is they took, I think, pretty much the top 4 teams in points right now. And there's a lot of people questioning why wasn't San Antonio X Factor in this when they won the 3 versus 3 tournament at the Midwest Open. I don't know how they determined it, but that's kind of up to NXL. I think they hope to put the 4 best teams out there, hoping that it would be a little more exciting than than other matches we've seen on TV. So, it is what it is, but overall, it was a pretty exciting tournament. The points were, there were points being scored. There were no blowouts, really. Teams jumped out. Teams came back. I think, the fact that it was a blind layout for the most part, the players didn't really know what was going on, so they had to learn it as on the fly and play as they go and learn. And I think it showed. Some teams did adapt it a lot better than others, and, that's kind of what you kind of expected would happen. But overall, very good event. I will be talking about, like I say, some of the stuff in the future episodes, such as 3 versus 3 and how paintball has a future on ESPN or television in upcoming episodes. So please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all that upcoming content that I have planned. And with that, we are starting season 2 of Old Guy Paintball, and today was our first issue. And I want to thank everybody for all their support in the past, and we look forward to doing another successful second season. And thank you for all that you've done for me, and I look forward to seeing all of you on the paintball field soon.